Lance, how are you? What's up? What's going on? What are
A
we here
lot's
to
been
talk
going.
about today? Tell the nice folks at home who you are, why I called you, and what you're doing.
Well, we go way back, Joe, a few years back. I
Way
think
back. We go back to the before times.
when I was working with Texas Medical Center's Innovation Institute, now called TMCI,
Not
and I
TMCX. Wasn't it X
no,
back then?
that's right, it changed. The branding
Wow.
has changed.
Because when you
TMCI.
left, it was like, what's the
What's the point?
yeah, I know. Well, so for the kind folks at home, you were my keynote speaker. I think it was October 2017, I think. And I think your video is one of the most watched of any of the 10x videos I've ever posted.
Okay.
Um, and it was called, I don't remember exactly now, but I just posted it again this week. I'm just not clearly thinking this week. Something like how to get somebody like Texas Hospital Center. That's the name of it, right?
Texas Medical Center.
Thank you. To care about your innovation. And it was a fantastic program. I imagine continues to be a fantastic program. And you've moved to something else. Now, I was absent enough that I didn't realize that are you no longer with TMC?
I'm serving as a medical advisor, but no, I'm no longer full time there, working full time for a startup company.
Okay. And tell us about this heart kidney company.
Sure.
I've done no research per usual.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Um, Actually, just want to make a comment. Through TMCI, I've had the opportunity to meet, as I'm sure you have, thousands of startups in our space, a lot of brilliant minds, a lot of brilliant ideas, and I've grown to be biased towards those founders who understand the problem in a unique way or a nuanced way that is kind of the way that they see the world, so to speak. Not so much drawn to the technology as I am the unmet need and how they define it. And so this particular company that I've been working with for some time now, about 6 years is when they started down this road, really sees the problem of heart disease and kidney disease differently than I've seen other people portray it. And so that's what attracted me to it. And the device or the technology is super simple and elegant. It's not rocket science, but the way they understand the problem is what's stood apart from me. So the name of the company is Roevios. That's the word that you were talking about earlier. It's fun to say. And it's been around, like I mentioned, for about 6 years. I met them initially when I was in Atlanta at a product development firm called GCMI, and
Okay.
they came to me in our group and asked for help in prototyping and testing this technology. And our first thoughts were like, "This is crazy. This will never work." And after spending 6 to 12 months with the team, we started to see some interesting results occurring in animals. And eventually, now where they're at now is actually in humans. So they're doing their early feasibility studies at a couple of sites here in the U.S. So really
Okay, a
exciting
couple of
stuff.
questions. One, just because of the background I know about you. So did they ever participate in TMCX?
No,
No,
they have
okay.
not.
So once you were toward the end of your tenure there, did you say, I remember those guys, let me see what they're up to? Or did they say, Dr. Black, we could really use your help?
It was the year or two before I left TMC. I'd started doing some consultancy work with the team, and so we always stayed in touch. Great people, great team, and
Okay.
always thought of them as friends. But the year or two before I left TMC, I started to do some work for them, just a little bit of everything actually, from pitch deck design to clinical research.
Okay.
And now that they were ramping up into their clinical studies, they were looking for some clinical guidance and directorship. So that's when I came on, and that was only about 6 months ago. So I just joined recently, back in March of this year, as their medical director.
We will start at the beginning where I tend to start as a marketer. To whom, how do you say the name of the company?
Roevios.
Roevios, not the easiest, but okay. To whom Roevios is the what? What's the primary benefit? And why should we believe that you can do that? So to
Yeah,
whom?
to those patients suffering from kidney disease.
Okay, probably not your target audience. That's the patient, but
That's
okay.
the,
So
or
would it be
those
to,
that take care of those patients, I guess I should say.
okay, fine. Revivia, Ro,
EVOS.
relieve. Oh, I see. It's like relieve, is it?
Roevios.
And what's the nature of that word? Is there a Latin root or something?
Yeah, it's two Greek words. They're kind of forced together. Roi is flow, and vios is life. So the flow of life.
Okay, the flow of life. Um, is the what? What is Roevios?
It's a medical device that actually relieves renal congestion, saving the kidney from continued decline.
Because it what? Why should I believe that?
Yeah, so it induces what's called a negative pressure in the collecting system, and it reestablishes a pressure gradient that is so important in how a kidney functions. I got some images if you want, I can share, Joe, if you think
Yeah,
that'll be
sure.
helpful.
Yep. Anything that helps tell the story. Go right ahead.
Awesome. Yeah, let me share my screen here. So let me start. It's the understanding of the problem, and the reason the title is, it's a heart and the kidneys relationship, just a unique way of looking at it. If you
Yeah,
imagine the heart to be a relatively sophisticated pump attached in a closed circuit to a really sophisticated filter, the kidney, it relies on a differential in pressure. So flow to the kidney and flow away from the kidney.
I
And
have to
anytime,
stop and say,
yeah,
folks, this is an appropriate slide to start a deck. He's clearly laying this out in a way my mother-in-law could understand. Some of the words might be a little big, but like back pressure, I don't completely understand, but anyone who would care would know. The pressure gradient vanishes. I also don't really understand that. The kidney becomes congested, losing its ability to function. Okay, go ahead. So
yeah,
see if we can break down the words I don't really get.
absolutely. So if you're looking at the bottom part of the image with little kidney bean is there.
Okay.
The kidney is a filter, but it's a very sophisticated filter. There's a lot more than just filtering blood. In
Mm-hmm.
order for it to do its job, it needs pressure gradient. So it needs higher pressure on the left side, going to a lower pressure on the right side. If that pressure gradient doesn't exist, the filter is not able to function appropriately.
Okay.
What's what's happening in
Does
patients who are,
gradient mean like relative?
yeah,
Side
exactly.
one relative to the other?
Yeah, the left side should be higher than the right side.
Okay.
So water is flowing downhill as opposed to
Mm-hmm.
trying to flow uphill or not, on a flat surface, if that
Okay.
makes sense.
All right.
What the kidney is able to do is accommodate pretty well fluctuations of flow or pressure, I should say, going to the kidney. So, your blood pressure normally is 120 over 80.
Mm-hmm.
If the mean pressure, mean arterial pressure goes up or down 10, 20, 30 millimeters of mercury, the
Mm-hmm.
kidney can accommodate for that. It can adjust the amount of fluid coming into the kidney through vasodilation and constriction relatively well. What it can accommodate very well to is a buildup of back pressure. So that other side of the equation, or the right side, if that starts to increase, also diminishing that gradient, then it can't really do a whole lot beyond a few millimeters of mercury. So it can't
Okay.
regulate itself. Does that make sense?
It does. It's still a little dense for me, but move to the next.
Yeah, yeah. Let's just, I'll break it down really easily. It needs about a 12 millimeter mercury gradient. So if it's 20 on one side, it needs to be 8 on the other side. 20 minus 8 is 12.
Mm-hmm.
If that 20 adjusts to 30, 40, 50, the kidney can do something about it. It can adjust the way that it accepts that pressure.
Mm-hmm.
If that 8 millimeters of mercury goes up to 15 or 20, it can't accommodate as well. So,
I see.
and it has a lot to
It can
do with
accommodate up, but not down.
that's right, on the backside, exactly. And so
Okay.
what we see in patients who have heart failure or kidney disease, oftentimes they end up having a paradoxical effect where they start to absorb more water and salt. So they hold on to water and salt because the body thinks I'm not getting enough volume or fluid to the kidney. So I'm going to hold on to more volume or fluid. The problem with that is the more you hold on to fluid, the more that back pressure can rise. And when that back
Mm-hmm.
pressure rises, the pressure gradient diminishes, and you get what's called renal congestion, which essentially is like the kidney getting flooded. So now you have a filter that's
That's
the filter.
clogged.
Exactly. Now, thankfully, we have a natural pressure relief valve, the little knob that you see on the side. That pressure relief valve is your ureter, allowing you to pee out extra fluid. But
Mm-hmm.
if that mechanism is broken, then obviously the fluid can build up and you're not what's called diuresing or peeing out enough fluid. And so we give those patients something called diuretics. We make them pee.
Mm-hmm.
But if diuretics work on the kidney, and if the kidney's not working, sometimes you end up with what's called diuretic resistance. And so what we've established is a way to fix that pressure relief valve through negative pressure. And that's what I was going to walk you through here real quick.
Okay.
So looking at the bottom, I'm taking that same pipe diagram now, and I'm just applying it to actual kidney. You have inflow, which is arterial inflow, and you have venous outflow. Your pressure relief valve is the urine output. So under normal conditions, these pressures are balanced and you get normal urine output. When there's congestion, which is where that fluid builds up, it provides a counterforce, and that counterforce is against this venous outflow.
Mm-hmm.
So it actually changes that pressure gradient, and the pressure relief valve starts to go bad, and you pee out a little bit, or not at all sometimes in
Mm-hmm.
patients. We're just introducing a new force. We're suctioning at this point, and that negative pressure reestablishes a balance of that net pressure gradient that we were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
How do we do that? Through a simple medical device. It's basically a
So if you
smart straw.
just up kind of
Yeah,
uh, feedback as we go
yeah,
up one, I think that you would benefit from animation there.
absolutely. I would love to have somebody help me do that. Yeah,
Well,
we,
I
we
mean, I'm not talking about like joke and just do this. I like it's like a $12,000
yeah,
video with like the platelets and stuff moving around. So I definitely have a guide for you if you're in the market for that.
yeah. I'd be happy to talk to them. We do have an animation on our website, but it doesn't really get down to understanding that pressure gradient as well. It's more of a high level
Okay.
image. But
So
but
at the
yeah,
moment, at this point of your story, I don't know if you have something that you're going to insert and will stay in my kidney.
yep, yeah. That's exactly what we're going to do. Is we're going to insert something into your kidney. Now, stay is relative. It can be 24 hours or it can be years, and that's something that depended on the level of problems that the kidney is having.
And
So
would it be removed or would it naturally break down when my kidney is functioning properly?
So we'll talk about the current case, and that's one where we actually remove it. So we insert a ureteral catheter.
Okay. And
So
I'm glad
this,
Eddie's on the phone today because he's working on something with the urethra as well.
awesome, awesome. This is a transurethral approach. So it goes through the urethra, through the bladder, into the kidney. This is the renal pelvis it's sitting in. It's a
Hmm.
coil. There's holes on the inside of this coil. This catheter exits the body and is attached to a pump. That pump induces a negative pressure of about negative 15 millimeters of mercury, which is about 1/10 of the pressure it takes to suck through a straw. So we're talking a very, very mild and controlled, in this case, pressure that we're inducing. What's happening, just like it happens in hydraulics, because there's an uninterrupted fluid column from this point all the way down to the 1 million plus nephrons, anything that I do here is going to be felt throughout the entire kidney system, all the way down to the really small cellular level, and
Hmm.
reestablishing that pressure gradient. So we're essentially sucking out the urine, relieving congestion locally on the kidney, and then overall improving diuresis or urination. And what we're seeing in patients already, those that aren't responsive to diuretics, which is the mainstay of therapy currently, actually seeing them, the kidney coming back online. The kidney's function is improving. They're peeing a lot more off. They're also excreting what's called sodium, or excreting sodium. And that's showing us that this negative pressure is having an effect on the entire length of the nephron, which is really exciting because we're showing that we're being able to save patients from further renal decline. These patients may end up having to go on dialysis because as the kidney continues to get congested, it starts to dysfunction. And it's this vicious cycle. It dysfunctions, so you hold on to more water causes more congestion, it dysfunctions even further or becomes unfunctional. And so what we can do is we can prevent that cycle from happening by inducing this negative pressure. So where we see
Well,
ourselves is
I would leave the
yeah.
hospital catheterized.
Oh, great, quick question. Right now, we're just doing 24 hours of therapy. So these patients are in the ICU or CCU. They're
Hmm.
having this procedure done. They're treated for 24 hours, and then it's explanted or it's removed. So you leave the hospital without any device in.
Is
Now,
that
and
is that true no matter the duration of the therapy? In no case would a patient leave catheterized?
not necessarily. So we think in the near future, we'll probably treat for 2 to 4 days, depending on how much it takes to relieve the symptoms. So it all depends on how much fluid they have. Some patients have 10 liters of extra fluid, some have 20 liters of extra fluid. So it really depends on the status of the patient, determines
Okay,
the
relate to
duration of
that.
their
How
care.
many liters does a kidney typically hold?
Well, kidney's not holding anything, it's just flowing through the kidney. But we typically have 7 to 8 liters of volume blood on us at any given point. So we're talking about twice, 3 times sometimes what our normal volume is. And that's when you start to see people have trouble breathing. because their lungs are filling with fluid. You see edema or really, squishy legs and hands because they can't they can't hold the fluid in their vasculature, so it spills out into extravascular space. We had this one patient. The doctor described him as the Michelin Man because his wrists and fingers were so swollen he couldn't close his fist. After having our therapy for about 6 to 9 hours, he was able to close his fist without any problem. So that fluid was coming off very quickly. And this is somebody who was on the high dose of the best therapy that we currently have. So it really did demonstrate a quick effect on that kind of patient.
Okay, next.
Yeah, so where do we see ourselves fitting in is in this gap. This is the problem that we're solving. There's this gap in care where you can give them the medication, diuretics, indiscriminately removing fluid as much as you can, which can be a good thing, but it can also be a bad thing to take off too much. And about 50% of these patients are leaving the hospital not fully decongested, so they still have fluid. What happens is they go home and they go back to their normal high sodium diets, or they stop taking their medication and they come right back to the hospital again, decompensated. And of course, there's a lot of resistance that can build up and side effects if you're on long-term or high-dose diuretics. If these aren't working and your kidney starts to fail, sometimes the clinician's hands are tied and they end up having to essentially watch their patients crash into dialysis. And that is a place you don't want to be, because once you're on dialysis, it's really hard to get off. And that, as you probably know, Joe, is not a comfortable lifestyle to be on dialysis. So we think we can prevent that decline from happening by saying, once we recognize that they're not responding to diuretics like they should, put in Juxtaflow, this therapy, and let us alleviate the pressure from the kidney. And ultimately,
if we discover this after we've already been to dialysis, is the damage irreversible, or can we still use your product and wean off dialysis?
That's a great question. It's actually one that we're studying right now. So when people go on dialysis, oftentimes they have what's called renal reserve. So their kidney is not completely shot. It may be like 15% working, so really, really low, and not able to keep up with the demands of the body. But we may be able to have even a therapy that can be applied in that case, where we're helping to preserve that renal reserve. But that's obviously something that's kind of far beyond our current studies right now. Our current studies are really just focused on helping these patients to diurese in the hospital acutely and preventing that.
How far are you with your market access work? I'm wondering if I should text Dick Anderson to get on the line.
So currently we're in early feasibility studies. We're just doing safety studies right now. Our pivotal will be sometime next year. And that's what's going to allow us to have the indication to actually be marketable. And that probably won't be done for another year and a half.
Well, so still reimbursement stuff is something you have or have not begun to work on.
We've begun to work on it. Yeah, we've begun to work on it, but we certainly could use some help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, please continue.
So I just wanted to kind of show the therapy and where we fit. I will say that's pretty much what I have now, but on average, the results that are coming from this product in the first 3 patients has been really promising on three sides. One is definitely increasing the amount of diuresis dramatically in these patients. 2 is we're actually showing an improvement in renal function by about 50%. So what that means is we measure renal function by what's called creatinine clearance or glomerular filtration rate. And what we're showing is able to increase that function by up to 50% on some of these patients, even higher on some of them. That's the first therapy that we know of that really shows that much of an improvement over a short period of time. So it's almost like we're putting the kidney back to work. The kidney, if it's allowed to do its job, can do a much better job than any medication. We always say that the kidney can outsmart any nephrologist or cardiologist. It just needs to have the opportunity to do its job, and it can't do that when the pressure gradients are appropriate. And the third thing is sodium excretion. So we treat the kidney oftentimes like a filter, but it is a filter, but it often does a lot of other things. Maintains blood pressure, helps the bone growth, stimulates red blood cell production. And if we just treat it like a filter, we're ignoring the fact that it has all these other critical functions. So what we're doing essentially is saying, let the kidney do its job instead of trying to overcompensate by using medications or ultrafiltration or dialysis.
I brought Eddie on. He's one of my penis experts.
That's a great title.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah. So we've developed a catheter that works in the same region, but sort of downstream from where you are. Downstream,
I get it.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. The jokes just keep flowing.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
So, but yours looks really quite interesting. also, my wife went through a situation where she had some of that same swelling that you were talking about when she was hospitalized once. So I know what that is, and it moves around the body. It's crazy stuff that the body tries to compensate. But so I don't know how I can help, because I don't know the market access stuff like Nick does, but I can see where you're coming from. How many people does this affect? I mean, what's the numbers on that?
Yeah, actually, we see the market being chronic kidney disease patients, which we're talking around 37 million in the U.S. So quite sizable market. Right now, the low-hanging fruit for us is in the acute decompensated heart failure market, partly because we can show effect very quickly. In the chronic kidney disease market, it's going to be a much longer term studies, which we plan on doing much later.
Sure. And how easy is it to sort of introduce that? I mean, I can understand getting into the bladder, but and also is it a requirement that you have to do it in both kidneys if somebody has two kidneys, or do you do it just in one?
Yeah, to answer the latter, not necessarily. You could do it in one. We're studying now in both kidneys. We think we can get a much more dramatic effect if we're able to do both, but you don't have to. And to answer the former question, the procedure is very analogous to placing ureteral stents for kidney stones. So it's something a urologist is very comfortable doing, can do in about 30 minutes under conscious sedation. It does require them to actually, do a procedure. So it's not something that they can easily do on at bedside, for instance, but we think we can get somewhere there. But it requires fluoroscopic guidance and assisted, actually looking at it through a cystoscope as you would any other ureteral stent. But so far, no problem in the placement, no problem in the explants of the patients that we have now. But it's a little bit more, I guess, complicated than a Foley catheter, for instance. But what we talk a lot about is it's actually probably safer than a central line as far as infection rates or complication rates. So it's something to be considered for sure, but it's a relatively safe procedure.
And my last question before, I'm sure Michelle has loads, in terms of how that coiling works, I presume you put it in straight and coil it once it's in place?
That's right. It requires a guide wire. It goes over the guide wire straight, and then once the guide wire is removed, it coils on its own. And the same is true for explantation. You have to put the guide wire in before you remove it. We think we can remove it without the guide wire. We're just playing it extra safe, obviously, for this early study.
Sure.
Michelle?
Hi there, Lance.
Hi, Michelle.
So I have a couple of questions on the regulatory side. Are you guys commercialized? Like, have you done a 510K or de novo, or are you under IDE right now? You're doing this investigational.
Currently under IDE, we expect it to be a 510K de novo. That's going to require a trial.
Okay. And then, so that's interesting because most 510Ks don't require trials, but most de novos do.
It's a de novo. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry.
So you've got your regulatory pathway lined out.
Yeah, we've had several Q-subs with the FDA. In fact, they helped us a lot in trying to think about which patient population to go after. We have several different indications. We wanted one. They said, we think you should go this route. And so we kind of have had these mutual discussions back and forth.
You had a pre-sub?
Yeah, several.
With who's your regulatory person? Because I know a gal.
Yeah, we have internal to us is Dr. Brian Tucker, and has a really great track record with the FDA. He's done several PMAs as well as 510Ks. He's the one leading all of our regulatory strategy and guidance.
How many full-time employees do you presently have?
6.
Oh, okay. And so the regulatory guy, the medical guy, you, presumably the founder is who? Somebody who comes from medical engineering, who?
Yeah. He actually comes from, he's an epidemiologist by training, but has spent most of his career in pharma, and then most recently spent his career at Abbott working with CardioMEMS. Okay. And so that was his last gig before he came here. And that's how we actually met. It was based out of Atlanta. So it was through that. So, and then we have,
So let's talk a little bit about your pre-sub experience, because I have clients that either fight me on doing it or fight me on not doing it. Have you done any during COVID right now?
So it was done before I came on board. So I'm not sure what the timing was. I would assume they've talked to the FDA. I don't know if it was an official pre-sub during the times of COVID, but I've only been with the company for 6 months.
Okay.
So there may have been some conversations happening. I don't know though, to be honest, because I know the trial was running back then. So I'm not sure if that was when the pre-sub was officially done.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you guys have really used them to your advantage and that you're actually listening to FDA to shape your regulatory pathway. a lot of times I see people like use pre-subs to try to negotiate with the FDA rather than be informed and make strategic decisions for their business.
Yeah,
So
that's a good point. And
Mhm.
it's such a novel technology. Nobody knows what's happening. So
Right.
we're definitely listening and want to make sure we're doing this as safe as possible not to harm anybody. So
The
and
novelty
if you're
then,
doing anything novel, it's so important to educate the FDA and get them on board and find out where they have gaps in understanding.
yeah,
so
absolutely.
with this novelty then, may I assume that there is nobody doing anything about this space?
No, in fact, there's nobody doing negative pressure in this space. The only negative pressure therapy that we've seen is in wound vac therapy, which is at the
Mhm.
surface.
And Dave is online. He's working on wound vac.
Yeah, and so that's one where we can point to and show there's a similar energy happening, but it's a much different location, obviously. And
Mhm.
the kidney is a delicate organ. You could suck too much and cause collapse, and so obviously we're not trying to accomplish that. So that we want to make sure that we're doing it at a safe dose, so to speak.
Dave, I don't, as you know, typically bring you on because I reserve that privilege for premium members. But if you have some insight that Lance would benefit from, just raise your hand and I'll bring you on. I know what you have. Dan, you have, Michelle writes, I'm frozen. And I'm sure she's thinking, I do not like the way my frozen picture is. So I will quickly expunge her from the screen. I'm sure that will be a great relief to her. Jan, I bet you have a comment about packaging.
Well, I was just looking at what he was showing, and I saw two different challenges going on for sterile barrier packaging and the component packaging that you have there, and just wondered what you were doing about that, because you definitely have a 11607 ISO requirements going on all over the place there as well. Though a lot of people tend to forget they need to ship things places.
Lance, don't I have the best group that we have all the perspectives come in? It's like free consulting for you.
Yeah, I love it. I want to, Jan, I want to put you in touch with our R&D guy. He's the one responsible for packaging. I can tell you the pump is packaged separately. It's in a cardboard box, and it's something that we send to our sites currently already prepackaged for us. So we don't actually have to do anything personalized or customized for the pump. The catheters are shipped, I know, separately. So they're each individually packaged in a like Tyvek / hard, I'm probably using the wrong terminology, but it's like a hard plastic tray with a Tyvek peel back.
Is it clear?
It's not clear. Well, it's semi-transparent, I guess you could say, because you can see the catheter through it, but it's not like a clear plastic, completely clear. But I'd love to put you in touch with our guy.
Yeah, you've said a few things already that make me a little bit concerned, but
okay.
Depends.
I'm probably saying it wrong.
No. The only thing you said wrong was cardboard. There's no such thing except for what they use for playing cards. It's corrugated.
Gotcha.
You haven't deduced she's a packaging engineer by profession. Andre is our sartorial member who always shows up properly appointed with a well-knotted tie. I really don't know anything else about the man. Andre, what have you heard today that made you think, oh, has he considered this or that?
Obviously, scaling up for production is always a concern, and whether or not there was a design for manufacturing that was incorporated into it. Producing it for use for low quantity is one thing, but then getting it up to quantities, of course, is another consideration, and could affect your design parameters.
Yeah, great question. In fact, we're having those discussions right now. Our R&D guy is having our discussions with Medical Murray, as a product development firm that we're working with, and they're talking about scale-up manufacturing, design for manufacturing. I know there's a change in manufacturing style recently that would help us to scale up quicker, but once again, it's a little bit out of my area of expertise there.
Yeah, and it really is. It's always got to be right sized. If you have an idea of the economic order quantities that you're going to be producing, that affects your design and so forth. And DFM, or design for manufacture, is a big component of getting it properly manufactured in the quantities that you need. And that's what we have engineers on staff that do that and so forth. And it's an important part of it. People don't think about it. They wanted to get it to work, but then you want to manufacture it properly in the quantities you need.
Right.
So Andre is a contract manufacturer, and if you believe that your team member would benefit by talking to a well-appointed gentleman, guy.
Thanks for that, Andre. Appreciate it.
Sure, Lance. Nice meeting you.
You too.
Paul, what have you got for us? What supply chain questions do you have for the man?
Yeah, I think I need to go get a tie. I'm not,
I got one for you.
You just
Yeah, I'm
get
not
get your
feeling
10-gallon
confident.
hat. That's your thing.
Yeah,
Let him do the tie.
I got I always have, I'm always walking in from the horses.
The 3
There you
gallon
go.
hat.
Well, I do think it's appropriate
Lance,
when you come on camera. You could be the guy with the hat. All right.
okay, and it's always there. So that's an easy fix. Okay, I
Okay.
won't go with the tie route. Yeah, it's Lance, love what you're doing.
Thank you.
My background is helping with supply chains and rethinking supply chains, especially in today's world. We do some contract manufacturing, just the assembly in the last bit. So we can help you manage and we are an FDA approved facility as well.
Awesome.
By the way, Andre, you and I really need to spend some time together because I think we can complement each other and I want to understand. I think Andre's facility can do much more of the production, manufacturing itself. We just do the last minute, the last mile assembly if you get to that part or warehousing. What I would have you think through as though in response to Joe's question, and thank you, Joe, is just really in today's market, right? Components are really tough to come by. And Andre can really confirm that, shipping costs have gone up 10x, if not more.
Sorry, this is why am I interrupting? Because Jan wrote, I refuse to wear a tie. I just think that's fun.
You want a hat?
I'm afraid Jan has branded herself as the lady who insists on using virtual backgrounds, and she's come to us from other galaxies, and apparently today from some kind of
really
prison
Nice.
yard, I think, was the background being.
That one
I'm
cost
sorry,
extra.
there was an actual business question going on, and I just ruined it. What did you say, Paul?
No, so I would say really sort of, pause everything down and look at the supply chain and then look at the suppliers and look at the geopolitical situations and the fallout of COVID. Because what worked last year or year before or yesterday may not necessarily be true. So you want to build in flexibility and resilience into your supply chain. Cannot stress that enough. And Lance, you had somebody else here who was talking, I think he was from Jersey as well. I forget his name, but he was, I think he was a doctor. When you change vendors and suppliers, and from a compliance standpoint, you've got to get them accredited and things like that as well. That's real, right? And simplified, everybody's heard about the shortage of chips as an example. If there's some component with you and your product that may have a shortage and you might have to switch, think about that in advance.
Got it.
Get redundancy in your supplier network and then get them both approved if at all possible and at no volumes and things make sense. But talk to Andre, talk to me, talk to other people in logistics, but really shore up your supplier network, your supply chain to bring in that resilience and the sustainability, because the dynamics have really changed.
Well, Paul, you bring up a good point, because on our AVL, our authorized vendor list, we are now putting our second and third alternative parts.
Right.
And we're
exactly. That's what we're doing.
Yeah, we're pre-qualifying them for our AVL list.
Yeah, that's what we're doing as well.
You have to.
Right. And you, as a company, you guys need to be thinking about that and requiring it as a standard for your supply chain with whoever you work with.
Thanks so much for that. Really appreciate it.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a degree of controlled hoarding or predictive hoarding, appropriate hoarding. Hoarding typically, was not a good thing, but now that actually is a business strategy which impacts cash flow, which impacts your investment strategy, which impacts your pricing strategy. Right. So what we do is look at the entire supply chain solution, all the way from securing, procuring, helping with credit lines. We can do that, bring the product in, get it assembled, right? Warehousing, shipping, managing returns, sending the replenishables, I'm sure the catheters, things like that you have, because so if there's a box involved, we can help. But you really need to look at the complexities that are relevant today, which were not true in the past.
And Paul, what synergy, it seems obvious, but I'll ask aloud, what synergy do you see with working with Andre?
See, we're not a good manufacturer. We don't do in-depth manufacturing. And I think, so I really want to know how we can complement each other. We're very good. We call it last mile manufacturing. The components need to come in to us ready to go, and then we can assemble them. So we work with designers and help change design models all the way up front and say, hey, think about it this way, make it modular. So if you want to change one component, improve a feature, functionality, it fits into the overall unit, and we can still reassemble it and get to market and keep going through iterations. It's a very cost-effective way to do it, but we don't do the component pieces. We just do the final assembly.
Yeah, Paul, and we do have some customers where we do what I would call major sub-assemblies, and they bring it in and do
Right.
final assembly and last touch for regulatory for the FDA inspection.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, and we typically work with the things that are not, and I think, Michelle, you can answer that question, level class 3 or 2 or something like that. We're not a super clean environment for class 1 products that get into the body. So
Probably a Jan thing too. Well, I hope you two are able to make nice business babies together.
yeah. No, I really
Lance,
think
if you
it's
would-
complementary. You know, obviously there's going to be some places where we overlap, but that's okay. It's a big world. But I think the complementary nature is very important, especially in today's market.
Lance, I haven't brought him on yet, but Nick, my market access guy, has joined the call. If you would kindly put your slides back up, specifically the one where I stopped you and asked you what your market access strategy was. I won't add Sanjeev, but he's always the guy who says, "How did you raise your money?" And
Yeah.
where are you with that?
So thus far, we've been privately funded. And right now, we actually are entering into our first institutional fundraising, just started a couple of weeks ago. And we're trying to raise close to 100 million. So around a Series B, which will
Okay.
bring us all the way to break even if we can, get that much capital, which would be great.
How much has been invested so far?
About 12.
Okay, that's quite a jump.
Quite the jump.
Yep. So if I were to assume you get them in blocks of 20 million, what's the next investment? What's on the critical path for you?
To get us through our pivotal so we can get our initial indication. So we have, part of the reason for the large raise is that we have multiple products, all within the same platform technology, but trying to go after different indications, and some of them require slight modifications to the product itself. So we're trying to push more than in tandem, more in parallel, some of these other products in our portfolio that will allow us to expand our indication relatively rapidly.
Nick, I think you came to 10X the time that Lance was my keynote in October, maybe, of 2017. And
Yeah.
at the time he was with the Texas Medical Center, and he was talking about innovation.
I'm pretty sure I was there. October of 17, I think I would have been there. Yeah.
So this young man has ventured off and joined a group that he had worked with years before on this novel technology that helps, well, in Joe terms, because I didn't retain it all, alleviate or redistribute pressure in the kidney.
That's it.
What do we call it? Negative pressure flow? Is that what you said?
Negative pressure treatment.
Treatment, okay. And apparently there's nothing like it. And on the slide here, you can see that he identifies a gap in existing therapies. Nick, while he's now at Boston Scientific full-time, used to be the guy at Intermountain Health to give you the thumbs up or down whether or not that that payer would recognize and pay for this procedure. What's the first thing I know you didn't have the benefit of hearing the presentation, but when you hear what little I've shared in this slide comes to mind?
Yeah, something. No, I don't. Lance,
He's
is
done
this
no work in market access at all yet. And I'm like, you should start.
okay? Lance, is this a surgical procedure? Is this outpatient? Is this in an ambulatory surgical center?
I
Is
see
it-
you.
Yeah.
You want to put up the other slide there?
Sure. Right now it's done, Nick, in the critical care unit. Well, actually, the patient's required to be transferred to a procedure room to be
Okay.
done. It's a procedure, not so much a surgery, in the sense that it's all done through natural orifice. It doesn't require any kind of incision. It can be done in conscious sedation.
You want to
Unconscious
bring the
sedation.
slide of the catheterization?
Oh yeah, sorry. It takes about 20 to 30 minutes. It's a technique that's very familiar to urologists who place ureteral stents for stone
Okay.
therapy. So it's very similar in its approach to that. And so it's transurethral. essentially, that we're placing these catheters all the way to the renal pelvis.
Okay. So if this is done outpatient, are these patients already admitted? Let me ask you that. Or is this for that
Right.
end of stage type stuff?
Right now, yes, these patients are already admitted. They're acutely decompensated with heart failure. Their kidneys are not doing well. They're not responding to diuretics. So it's all done inpatient, but we do see a future where this can be done outpatient and have a more long-term effect, months to years even.
Okay, so for that current cohort of patients, super sick, they're already admitted, this is for the last perhaps, 6 months of life, 6 weeks of life, something like that. If they're already admitted, then this would go into the DRG, bundled into the big bundled payment. And at which point the insurance company couldn't care less what the hospital's doing to their member. That they say, you know what, we're paying you guys $80,000. Whether you guys used Lance's device or you used an ACE bandage, we couldn't care less. You're getting $80,000, which is a good thing and a bad thing for a company like yours. It's a good thing because you don't have to run around the country talking to, every insurance company trying to get them to write a medical policy for your really new and novel, unique device. And they ask for, 10 years of randomized prospective, $100 million stuff.
Right.
So that's the blessing. The curse is that the hospital becomes your customer and the hospital goes, well, Lance, how much is this? And you say, oh, it's $3,000 or, whatever the price tag is. And they go, so you guys are going to take 3,000 out of my $80,000 DRG? No, thanks. And now you've got a true, textbook health economic problem where you have to go, yes, but for the $3,000 you guys were going to lose out of your DRG reimbursement, you're going to save 6,000 because these diuretics cost so much and because, whatever it is.
Right.
So that's where that real health economic modeling comes into play to say, yes, value analysis committee, who is our customer. The other thing you can do too for something like this is you can get what's called pass-through status, which allows the hospital to bill separately for your device for a few years. So not only will they get the $80,000, they'll get 80,000 plus 3,000. Now that'll last for about 36 months, and it's a way for you to get the camel's nose under the tent for a few years, for where hospitals go, we can't live without this thing. I don't know how we did it until Lance invented this and brought it to market. And then the hospital will negotiate a higher DRG reimbursement with their insurance companies. And, after 3 years is over, the DRG will go from 80,000 to 83,000, or the hospital just eat it. And they rely on your health economics to show that for the additional 3,000 they're paying, they'll save 6,000 somewhere else. So it's worth it even if you don't get pass-through status.
Got it. That's super helpful. And so the DRG wouldn't change. It would just be a renegotiation of the payment by the insurers.
Yeah,
after
and
3 years.
Correct. And your company wouldn't have anything to do with that. That would be strictly up to the hospital. The risk that you run is that the hospital goes, sweet, we'll use you for 3 years. And on month number 37, we ain't ever going to talk to you again. And you go,
Gotcha.
oh, dang it,
Yeah.
So at that point, you've got to come from 3,000 down to 2,000, with economies of scale and things like that, so that you can say, hey guys, when you first started with us, before you had translational pass-through, before you had anything like that, we were $3,000. We've done a lot over the last 3 years. We've now brought it down to $2,000 is our ASP. And you guys know the benefit. You love this. You can't live without it. And they go, wow, okay. So if they don't go renegotiate their DRGs with their insurance companies, then, maybe they'll be willing to lose that 2,000 because it's so much better than dealing with the negative sequela of diuretics in patients that have end-stage renal failure.
And
Your
is
pride
that,
the way,
knowledge,
if
Nick,
these-
never ceases for me. I swear to, it's like, Lance, in the chat, I put a link to premium. I've now introduced you to like 6 people in the network that might have a thing or two to share with your buds. So it'll
thank
be
you so
the
much.
easiest way to connect you all, but otherwise we can go the archaic email me route if you need. Hey, thanks, Nikki. Where are you? You just going
Out
for a
for a-
walk or?
just out for a walk with the baby.
Oh, let's see her.
She's got a runny nose, so she's cute
Okay,
from
well,
here.
just keep her away from us.
Yeah,
Oh, wow. Look at her little blonde head.
she's got a really bad cold. So I'm
Aw.
I'm babysitting today. In other words, parenting. While Holly takes the other kids to our homeschool group. So we're just out for a walk.
How old is she now? Is it a year?
She is a year, July 10th. So
Wow.
yeah.
Cute.
We had an MDG premium baby this week.
Oh,
Jeff
really?
Gable has a young, very Irish named daughter. She will go by Millie. I don't remember how to pronounce all the other things. Before we go, Rama's asking a question about, Lance, about your QMS system. What have you got set up for that?
Yes, we have our QMS has been established. We actually have someone full-time working, a quality person, professional working. We use TMS, I think is the name of the software, to do all our document handling and
Did you say
controls.
TMS?
TMS,
I don't know him personally, but okay.
same.
Yeah.
I just do what I'm told when it comes to quality. Hey,
I
sign this.
understand. I do what I'm told when it comes to being in my home. Next 10X is May 10th through the 12th in San Diego. If you can make it, same hotel that you were at.
Awesome.
And I'm really glad you could make it today. And I hope and anticipate that you picked up a thing or two that need
did.
some follow-up.
Thanks so much for having me. And thanks for introducing me to these great folks. I really appreciate it.
This is the highlight of the week, typically. And as I shared, I needed to pick me up today. So thank you, Dr. Black.
Good to see you again, Joe. Thanks for
Hey,
the
folks.
time.
See you all next week. Be
Bye,
well.
everyone.
All right.
Thanks for your help.
Bye now.